a shame that many people do not spend the time to dig into subjects like what we talk about here, about critical thinking, the history of America. And again, not to knock people, but I want your opinion on this. I do some other speaking, and in addition to the space and astronomy and astronomical topics. But I do talk about this subject, and I'm amazed in some of the schools, and we're going to get into books that you've written, so apropos to the conversation, that many of the young people, and maybe even seniors and adults, really have no idea, even describing who vice presidents are, who presidents are. That's pretty strange, but how government works. So your response to that, I mean, it's probably a no-brainer for you to say, well, yeah, that's common sense, Steve, but tell us, I find that to be totally incredible that civics are not really taught the way they probably should and how they were in the past.
Well, that's by design, Dr.Sky, and that has been one of the big focuses on my work. Out of my 8 books that I've written, 3 of them deal exclusively with the subject of education. And what I discovered going on 15 years ago now is that the system was actually designed to do this. It was designed to dumb down the population. It was designed to erase our history. It was designed to turn our young people away from God, away from their families, away from their country, away from our Constitution. And I've got the receipts for that. I can prove that. I can quote the primary source documents, the essays, and the speeches of the men who built this system. And there's essentially an uninterrupted chain going back to the first guy who seriously proposed that the government ought to be educating our children, all the way up to the present day, of people who recognize education system is the primary weapon in the battle against freedom, in the battle against national sovereignty, in the battle against Christianity. And so you can start at the beginning with Robert Owen. This was a Welsh industrialist back late 1700s into the early 1800s who decided that he was going to declare war on what he called the great trinity of evil, this being marriage and family, private property, the institution of private property. Of course, God said, thou shalt not steal. And so this also had to go. And last but not least, what he called irrational systems of religion. In particular, he was talking about Christianity. He set up a communist commune, and he concluded that the best way to move society in the direction that he envisioned, well, actually, he openly claimed that he was talking to spirits of dead people that were giving him his ideas, but he believed that the best way to move from where we were then, a very Christian, very free, very liberty-minded society, to where he wanted to be, a utopia where there would be no family, where children would be raised by the collective, where there would be no private property, that the best way to do this was to take control of the education system using the force of government. And so he set up a secret society to do this. We have all the records of that from defectors who came out of it. And, well, the rest is history, as they say.
Well, it's interesting. We always pose a question to our audience far and wide on the Dr. Sky Experience. In this particular episode in the theater, we do discuss the story of American exceptionalism. How interesting it is, Alec, and I don't think everybody thinks this way, all the great celebrations for our 250th, let it not wane like a candle that loses its flame. We keep it proud and we keep it strong here on this particular show and this particular conversation with you. The number here, if you have a question, but more importantly, here's our question to you. What do we need to do to keep America on the same trail? That truth, justice, and America, the concept that this radio station talks about so much, is alive and well in every day in our thinking, from the Pledge of Allegiance that is hardly done anymore, to, again, studying the Constitution, and even studying your right, ladies and gentlemen, by a thing called the Citizens Rule Book, a Bill of Rights, a jury handbook, all things that you can explore to know your rights. Because what, Alex? I don't want to steal your thunder. If you don't know what rights you have, how can you ever tell what rights that you lose? And his website, by the way, as we continue on this iteration of discussing America in its exceptionalism state, libertysentinel.org is one, where, as I mentioned before, he is the senior editor of the New American Magazine, and another website that we'll be talking about later on, the newamerican.com website. I always wondered about this. Why, and maybe I'm a little offbeat here, I don't know, maybe the audience can help me. Why is it, or is it just an imagination, that I constantly hear democracy, 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 when we really, truly, Alex, and you can explain this better, I'm sure, we are a representative democracy, but whatever happened to the true tenet that we are a constitutional republic? Why has that democracy thing just been pounded into our heads? And the republic word, why, is it too much like Republican? Maybe that's a silly way to look at it. I doubt that has valor, right?
Well, our founding fathers were very clear and very explicit that they were setting up a Republican form of government. And there's several ways to understand that, and they certainly did include democratic elements within the structure of that constitutional republic, but they recognized democracy as a very dangerous form of government. And before people freak out by hearing that, I think we need to explain some terms here. What they understood by the term democracy, and James Madison, the father of our Constitution, articulates this very clearly in Federalist Paper number 10. He explains that this is a system in which the majority essentially rules, which sounds appealing until you end up in the minority and you realize you actually have no rights. And so their idea was, we don't want mob rule. We don't want a system where 51% of the people can rob or kill or oppress the other 49%. And so the key element of a republic, of course, is the rule of law. And they were very clear about these issues, right? They wrote about it extensively. Anybody who chooses to investigate these things can find them out very quickly and very easily. In fact, you can read the Constitution. Article 4 guarantees to every state in the Union a republican form of government. In other words, a government based on the rule of law rather than the rule of men. And they were very clear about the source of the law. They actually mentioned it in the Declaration of Independence, which we just celebrated the 250th anniversary of. They said that the laws of nature and nature's God. And unfortunately, that that's mentioned at all in our government school textbooks and the fake documentaries that they air on so many of the television channels, they portray that as some sort of deist or Enlightenment era thinking or even Masonic, when in reality it's a very clear reference to the most cited legal scholar from the founding era. His name was Sir William Blackstone, and he wrote commentaries on the laws of England, which was considered at the time, and even some people today still consider it to be the bedrock of American jurisprudence. What he explained is the laws of nature and nature's God are the laws that God has ordained that can be discerned by studying creation, the physical laws and things like this, and the moral laws that have been revealed in the scriptures. And he says no laws that are contrary to those laws of nature and nature's God are of any validity. And he says they are applicable to all people in all nations, all times, everywhere on the globe. So these things have meaning, and it's very easy to discover the meaning. They believed that God gave you a right to life because he said, thou shalt not murder. That means even if 98% of the people vote to execute you, it's too bad. God gave you a right to life, and 98% of the people can go kick rocks. They believe that Alex God gave you a right to property.
Right. I love hearing you, but I'm hoping no matter, we don't want to lose you, so wherever you're standing on your phone, don't go away because we don't want to lose this great conversation with you. No fault of your own, of course. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have concerns and questions, I want to go to Alex Newman on this one. If you had to pick the biggest, most egregious thing that's going on in our country right now, and I know there's probably a smattering of many things, what would you say from your journalism background and your education and your authorship of books? What's the number one concern for you that keeps you not awake at night, but keeps you focused on measure?
That's an easy one for me. That is the miseducation of the next generation. We could talk about the statistics all day long, but according to the government itself, less than 1 in 3 victims of a government school system are even proficient in any core subject. That includes reading, writing, math, history, civics, right? Literally less than 1 in 3 of these children. We spend $250,000 a year supposedly educating them. Millions of them graduate unable to read their high school diplomas. 40% of them, according to the CDC, report persistent hopelessness and depression. 10% reported trying to kill themselves last year, according to the CDC.
Wow. Sad.
Depending on what state you're in, somewhere upwards of a fourth of them don't even know what gender they are. They don't know what bathroom to go in. Hundreds of thousands of them are identifying as cats. Almost 20% of them report sexual abuse and misconduct from family members. So we have an existential crisis here. And I believe all these other battles, they're very important, right? The border, the taxes, the politics, all these things are important issues. But if we miss the boat on the education issue, we're going to lose on every other one. It's going to be a cataclysm. So we've got to address this one. It's the most important, in my opinion.